want to make sure we are doing our official business here and things like that to time this out. So I'm going to go ahead and call our meeting to order. At this time, it is currently 9:30 straight up, according to my clock. So we'll call our meeting to order. And I ask Angelica, would you please call our roll so that we can assure that we have a quorum present
Yes.
and can officially do our business this morning?
Yes, sir. David Weir, presiding officer.
I'm here.
Michael Fitch.
Here.
Daryl Gaines. I believe I heard a here.
Yes,
Dr.
ma'am.
David Schmidt. And Brittany Webb.
I'm here.
Mr. Weir, you have a quorum.
Okay, thank you very much. So moving on to item C on our agenda, you all board members were sent a copy of the summary of our minutes from our meeting back on Monday, June 22nd of 2020, which was a video conference meeting. You've had a chance to review these meeting minutes. Is there any corrections to that? Any seen? Okay, I'd like to ask for a motion to approve these minutes.
I motion.
Okay, Brittany motions to approve the minutes as written. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, Daryl has seconded that. Any discussion, other discussion before I call for the vote? All those in favor of approving our minutes as written for our June 22nd, 2020 meeting, please indicate it by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, speak now, please. Thank you. Minutes approved and as written. Okay, moving on to item D from our public comment. As this being a public meeting, we have an opportunity to open our floor up for public comment. We have no one online, or there's no one that signed in online to do that. So we will not have that, but we did receive two written in public comments. Also, board, that was sent to you to review as well. One from Mr. Fred Miller, and was more or less just wanting to praise. I felt most of the email was a praise to Leonard and handling that, looking at that. So thank you, Leonard, for doing that. Obviously, as I read through that, there was probably some things that we could probably learn from. So I know staff has reviewed that and has reviewed these. So I trust that that adjustments could be made there as far as in public customer service in regards to that. Then there was another one covered by Mr. Moore and requesting a flow chart. And so that's certainly something that staff can and we could discuss if needed to try to be more of a little bit checks and balances system, I guess, is what they're looking for there. So that basically covers our public comment. Any comments from staff on that agenda item before I move on to our staff reports?
David, I have something if they don't have anything.
Okay.
I just want to personally thank Leonard for his hard work in getting the comments and things that we had issues absolutely taken care of immediately. And so, Leonard, thank you so very much for everything you do.
Thank you, Brittany.
Okay. Well, this is segueing Brittany really well because Leonard is up first in our staff reports. So if there's anything else that we need to touch base on licensing as far as the licensing division that addresses Leonard, we certainly can do that during his report time at the end of that. So Leonard, you're up for starting staff reports.
All right. Good morning, advisory board members. Chairman Weir, Leonard Rivas with the licensing division. I just wanted to give a little bit of update of what we're doing here in the office. So we continue to process license applications and renewals since the stay-at-home order on March 23rd. Most of the licensing division is working from home, and we are rotated into the office to scan paper applications, transcripts, renewals on a rotating basis. And today is my day, so I'm here in the office. How do we do that? Well, we scan the work on our copy machines to a secure shared drive, and the staff working from home pull the applications and renewals to process and approve those applications and make exam eligible. Angelica, if you could go up, please. Up or down, sorry. So our licensing statistics for FY 2020, we issued 285 new ones. We renewed 1704 renewals, and the total population in FY 2020 is 4,056. And you can see so far for September of FY 2021, we issued 42 new licenses. We renewed 93 renewals. And the current population at the end of September was 4,103. And then for FY 2020, for temporary licenses, we issued 12. And so far for September of 2021, we've issued 4 licenses. That concludes my report, unless you have questions about the numbers or about what we're doing from home.
Any questions, Brittany?
Leonard, is it okay if I share this information to the athletic trainers in the state of Texas, these numbers? Is it okay
Sure,
if I
absolutely.
put that out on social media?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? I think that the biggest thing that I have in just hearing from constituents and things, and I know, first I'm going to say I know what an incredible challenge I can imagine trying to deal with the things that you guys are dealing with. I think the biggest things that I'm kind of hearing is that just there's little breaks as far as in the communication chains a little bit from processing some of these, and so. I know as we continue to work through COVID, it's important for the training to continue to occur as more people, as people go on and continue to work through our licenses and processing of licenses and things like that to make sure, rules and all those things are properly applied. And Leonard's, Leonard and Heather and things have worked through a couple things, and thank you, Leonard, for working through those. But just a couple of places where there were some misunderstandings to students. And I think it's just important for everyone that's not as familiar with our program as far as staff is to try to educate and bring them in the loop. And even though as we are more distant from each other, our level of service is still reflective. And these individuals, in some cases, this is their first contact with TDLR and our board to try to get through with some of these students. And so we certainly want those first impressions to be really strong. We know the great work you guys are doing because we have a long history. But unfortunately, sometimes we don't hear about all the great cases that that slide through. You never hear those because that's just the way it's supposed to work. And so, but we hear about sometimes the cases that they're sidetracked somewhere along the line. So all I say is do all that you can to continue to train your staff so that we stay on top and doing that. And I know you are, and thank you for that. But that's all that I had. So.
I got a question for you, Leonard.
Sure.
I submitted a question about a year ago. And of course, with everything that's occurred with my injury and then with COVID, things kind of got put away. But one of the issues that I had with renewing the last go around was that I do a check through my employer and there's no printable invoice. Did we ever look at making a change to the website or making it possible to print off an invoice for a licensee to print off and to, like in my case, get the check cut and submitted with a copy of the invoice so that it gets credited properly, as opposed to the situation I had where I was 2 weeks into October before I finally got renewed as a September enrollee or renewal.
Mr. Gaines, I think I remember your issue. It's been a while.
Yes, sir.
We do mail out the postcard notices, and we also send email notifications. And on that postcard, it says if you would like to request a paper renewal, to send the postcard back or email us, and we will send you a paper renewal. That's the only way we can get notices, an invoice renewal notice to you. We don't automatically send those out. We either send you the postcard, we send the email reminders, and then if you want an actual renewal notice sent to you, you have to return the postcard and let us know that you want that, or email us that you want a paper renewal.
I did request that and didn't get it. Was told to wait before to wait to get that. And then when I went in and filled out my application online as requested, when it came time to print something off, neither my license number nor any other significant information was on what I printed off that allowed me to cut a check through my employer. And when it was sent in, the left hand didn't know what the right hand was doing because it went to where the checks were received from, and they were confused, and they had to contact me back to get my license number, etc., like that. And that's what I put in there and ask if there is a possibility of, for this coming September, because my school district's budget runs September 1 to August 31st, so I can't submit a request prior to September 1.
Mary
And
Winston
so-
TDLR. Red. I'm sorry. This is Mary.
Yeah.
What
Hey.
month was this?
September of let's see, it's 2020. September of 2018.
Okay. All right. So
No, September of 19. Yeah.
okay. I'm sorry, and I'm not, and you know me, and I'm not trying to. This is
No.
something that needs to happen, but actually you're having a little bit of a connection problem. We can still keep moving with the meeting, but I want to make sure you handle this. Can I put you, Leonard, on the spot to reach out to Red after this
Yes.
this meeting so we
Yeah.
can find out what happened? And if there's a process issue, Red, thank you. We're going to hop on it, but we want to make sure this is taken care of. But we'll, I know this is probably not based in fact, but I swear the longer we get on, our connection issues sometimes like expand. So I'm like, while we have everybody here, let's kind of keep the agenda moving so we can get it handled. But
Sure.
Red, is that okay with you?
Yes, ma'am. That's fine.
Okay. Okay. And Leonard, please kind of update me to make sure.
I will. Sure.
Okay. Thank you so
All right.
much. Sorry, Red,
Sure.
but I'm just worried about the connection. So let's keep it moving if we can, Mr. Ware.
Not a problem.
Okay.
Okay, any other separate items for Leonard before we move on to customer service? Okay, Mrs. Dawn Robinson, you've got the floor. You may need to unmute.
I'm so sorry. Good morning. Good morning, advisory board members. I am Dawn Robinson. I'm one of the managers here in customer service. You have before you our fiscal year 2020 customer service contacts. We had a little over 1,200 emails and calls. We had a little more than 2,200 calls. That completes my report for our contacts. If you have any questions, I'm here to assist.
What is your average call hold time?
Currently, average call, it kind of depends on, it varies from, if it's around lunchtime, like between 12 and 1, it may be about a little more than maybe 30 minutes. Anytime before or after that, average time maybe 15 or 16 minutes.
Okay. That's the only thing, that's the continual thing that I hear, Ms. Robinson, from customer service, is that either the long hold times are much greater than that. I've heard of an hour. And secondly, I've heard of individuals leaving messages and then they're not getting return phone calls. So I challenge customer service to improve in that regard. It's just because this was, one of the flagship things as that, as we move over here. And I know you guys have assumed a lot more boards and a lot more challenges there. But again, as I mentioned to Mr. Rivas a while ago, in many cases, this is when a person has a problem, you guys are the first person
Right.
or first people to hear about it, and that's their first contact level. And we want to make sure we're sending a great message that we're on top of customer service and getting back to individuals. So that's the challenge that I kind of bring to you today, to continue to strive to do better in that regard.
And I accept that. I will take that back. Thank you.
Any other questions from board members to Ms. Robinson? Okay, hearing none, I move on to Rebecca Armas from our Education and Examination Division.
Good
You
morning.
have the floor.
Good morning, Chairman Weir, advisory board members. My name is Rebecca Armas. I'm with the Education and Examination Division. And I'm going to just present to you a few little items from us today. And I think if you scroll down a little further, you'll see under the examination statistics, that PSI was shut down for a little while. And so we don't have the numbers you see here aren't, as accurate as they would be if we had full capacity and the examination sites weren't shut down for a few months. At this time, PSI has opened up some third-party sites to help get with the flow of testing, to make sure that we're trying to get everyone tested, because again, we're not up at full capacity at the sites. In order to practice good social distancing, they still have, limited availability, but they're doing, they're doing the best they can to get everyone scheduled, within a few weeks. If somebody's calling trying to test tomorrow, unfortunately, again, due to the limited capacity, that's probably not going to be optimal for them. But PSI is definitely, opening up some sites for folks. And another thing, we did reschedule because, of course, we had a practical examination set up for April and it was moved. We made that examination session up in July, and December session is scheduled to go on as scheduled. We've got a deadline date of November 23rd of this month, this year. Just make sure that everybody's made their appointment to get that scheduled by then. And we're good to go to test our practical examination site on December 6th. Let's see, what else do I have here? We've got, we worked with the education work group to assist with the language so that when the rule implementation came, to have the domains match what we have in our candidate information bulletin. You'll see that here later on. And of course, the House bill that was passed that requires all health professions to take a human trafficking prevention training. There is some FAQ pages that we have, and how to register for Train Texas. You can take this free course through HHSC. And I believe I have covered everything. Looking through my notes, I apologize. But it looks like I've got everything here covered for y'all. Again, just have folks please reach out to the candidate information bulletin to prepare for the examinations. It's there, it's got all the latest updates if we have to postpone. But at this time right now, the practical examination is set for December 6th. And I'll be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Okay, I do have one or a couple. So Rebecca, to your knowledge, and we can't make sure if, I guess my question is will all the students that have registered to take that practical, will we be able to, is there enough spots for them to be able to be examined in their written portion in time to meet that practical requirement? I mean, I'm not saying we can't, somebody that comes in at the last minute, we may not be able to accommodate, but
As of right now, when I looked at PSI's, so they send them to me weekly, so I haven't received it this morning. But last week, they still had some availability for this month for the written sites,
Good.
Even at the third-party sites. So if the students, it's just a matter of the students, checking their emails, because that's how they get notified if they're eligible.
Sure.
You have to remember to check that email, and then they, contact PSI And if there are any, if for any reason something happens, they can email us at education at tdlr.texas.gov, and then I can work with PSI to see about getting some of these folks scheduled.
That's,
But
that's great. That's perfect. I know we've tried to utilize a written test as a clearinghouse to get to the practical so that we're not wasting that time.
exactly.
But I also know with only 2 practical times a year, but I was hoping that we wouldn't have to invert or change our procedures there. But if the student, we can't prevent a student from coming in late, but if that's the case, that is on them. So
Yeah.
next thing is that I had is just some of the feedback, and hopefully this is getting better, or that we could reach the HHS. Some of our members have struggled, as you probably have heard, of trying to get registered for the human trafficking course. That maybe some of our stakeholders that are a little bit more technically challenged as far as working through those processes. And so, and then also trying to get HHS in their course to actually recognize us as being an entity in there. So, I mean, I think that reinforces that if we're being asked to take the course, that we're also identified in the as a drop down as an athletic trainer to be able to not be another type of situation. So I basically request that you guys reach out to them and ask for those changes, because this is a this is a law, and this is going to be a long-term type of deal, so that we can work on that. I just think as being recognized as athletic trainer.
Are we seeing an improvement in that, which is one of the concerns that we were looking for?
Well, if you look, again, it's kind of hard just because we haven't had the volume due to COVID.
Yes, ma'am.
But if the written was, hovering around 42, then it jumped up to 47. And then because we only had a few folks testing in the fourth quarter, it kind of took a dive. The practical examination is where, you'll see the differences as well. It's just, I think the more that, it gets out there with the help of the associations of, following the domains and how what the examination is covering as we listed in the CIB and now in the rule, I think that may also increase awareness of how they need to study. But I don't think, making with the examination, the written examination, I say it's on the uptake. I think that at first it might have been just trying to get used to the new testing format and examination and make sure that it is a true assessment. I think now we're going to start to see improvements because it's cycling through. The students are, everybody's more comfortable with what we're presenting and how we develop our examination because it's in conjunction with the domains. So
Yes.
I think we're going to start seeing an uptake in the performance of the examinations now once we start testing on a more consistent basis, which, knock on some wood, we're getting there. We're getting there.
I think Red, the other thing too is we ought to be seeing is that being that we're utilizing our written as a clearinghouse, I think we should be seeing better practical scores across the board, because unless you have individuals that get in and just freeze in front of an athletic trainer and just can't perform the skills portion, they've already been tested somewhat, and so written numbers may be a little slower, but I agree. I saw the same thing and kind of said, okay, this is looking better. So I agree with you, but again, I think we should be seeing so candidates that get to that practical portion have already been cleared somewhat.
Yes, sir. I agree with that.
And you will see that because that generally happens. It's once they get through that written examination, it's the practical stuff, because it's the practical stuff that they do, that they work on every day, that unless, like Chairman Weir says, unless they freeze, it just comes second nature to them and they pass.
Okay, board, any other questions?
Yes, I have a question for you. This is Brittany Webb. So I am constantly getting questions, especially when the school year started, about the human trafficking training, and that their school districts do the human trafficking training in. Why can't this count? Yada, yada. So for the record, would you just please state to anybody who's watching that the human trafficking must go through this website that's listed?
It was mandated at it was a bill that was passed in the last.
No, that's
but
okay.
It was a bill that was passed legislative session that it is required for everyone to take it through HHSC. We understand that there are a lot of other resources out there, HSC, to offer that. So if they wanted to become an approved provider.
Thank you. I just wanted it to make sure that they heard it from y'all.
Sure.
While we're, I can cover this in future. I'll cover this in future because there is something that we need to circle back on. We'll take it up in another agenda item. Okay, so anything else for Rebecca? Thank you, Rebecca, for your work and efforts. So I'm gonna call on, let's see here, Mr. Robert Reyes from the Enforcement Division to give your report, please, sir. You have the floor.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and board members. My name is Robert Reyes, prosecutor with the Enforcement Division. I'll cover some personnel updates with you first. On February 15th of this year, Debbie Hawkins was promoted to Legal Assistant Supervisor. She has worked for TLR for the past 8 years as a legal assistant in the Enforcement Division. So now she's a new Legal Assistant Supervisor for the past, well, on March 1st, John Medlock was promoted to Chief Prosecutor. He has worked for TDLR for 7 years as a prosecutor, previously serving as such and in the Enforcement Division. Since John was promoted, we had a spot open, and on May 1st, Trevor Thielen was promoted as Senior Prosecutor. Trevor has as a prosecutor here in the Enforcement Division. We had some retirements as well in August. First of all, on August 31st, the investigations manager, Greg Dodson, retired after 22 years of service here with the department. Greg oversaw the investigative section within the Enforcement Division, which included 42 investigators. This position is currently, and we're hoping to conduct interviews soon. That's my latest information on. Chairman Weir, depending on what your designation was in the case, whether you were a witness.
Or, a letter and notify. I guess it's important for us to be able to answer the questions that we can legally answer and kind of know in the process of how we can help out our members. So that was important. So thank you.
Yes, and we will look into it, as Robert said, or Robert will, and Robert reached back out to me and looped me in as to if we have specific, those specific complaints that we can become aware of. Where were you listed as parties and so forth? Robert keeps disappearing, but he's still there. It's just behind that screen. He's still there. So thank you all both for making us aware of it. And Robert's going to reach out to Ron and to, well, I'm just ultimately it's Ron, but so because he's the director, but also to Mr. Medlock. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Anything
else? Anything else for Mr. Reyes? Okay, Mr. Stuart Myrick, you're up.
Good morning, Stuart Myrick, Regulatory Program Management. You see our report. I'm going to hit a couple highlights. We have had 2 retirements. Baby Perez and Marinella LaFleur retired end of October. As you see, they worked with the massage program as well as barber and cosmetology. So two vacancies, hopefully, that we'll fill soon, because that was a wealth of knowledge that went to retirement with those programs. As far as current projects, I want to hit on something that Rebecca was talking about earlier, the human trafficking prevention courses. So House Bill 2059, which was the legislation that was passed by the legislature, she did mention that the courses that the healthcare practitioners have to take, those courses have to be approved by HHSC. Heather was kind enough to share with me that there is a list on HHSC's website, and they are now up to at least half a dozen different courses. Most of them are free, and the list is growing. This list was updated. I'm seeing, like, for instance, there's a couple courses from an organization called Ransomed Life of Texas, Baylor Scott and White. So if anybody's working for Baylor Scott and White, apparently there's a course that is free for Baylor Scott and White employees. There's also a few others. So there are a few more options on the human trafficking prevention course. And if entities or providers want to have their course approved, they can contact HHSC to get that approval, and they have some links on their website as well. So just a little bit of that. Mary Hoffman, who was one of our teammates, was the lead on the bill implementation team, easy for me to say, for that bill. So she has been working tirelessly to get this implemented, because the requirement went into effect September 1st. So that's in. Other than that, not a whole. The assumption that there will be a vaccine available by the end of this month. By the way, we're in November. Scary that I just said that. But we don't know, and we don't know what that vaccine will be. We don't know how many doses will initially be available. So they have talked about, they've got different groups. I know that frontline healthcare healthcare workers are in that group that are supposed to be front of the line. Number of vaccines given, number that had to be destroyed because of whatever. There's a whole thing about it, and I can share a link. I'll send it out. I'll send it out through advisory board staff later today. I can send the link and have her share it. Angelica, I'll send that to you, and if you'll share it with everybody. But the short answer is, if athletic trainers are considered frontline, if they're working frontline, yes. But I'm not the one that makes that decision. That's way above my pay grade.
Well, I mean, I just, I think all I'm saying is that remember us in your discussions to
I do.
To bring that up, because I mean, in most cases, we are in our own various entities. We are where athletes come to for health care.
Absolutely.
They're contacting us when they have symptoms. They're, hopefully it's by phone and they don't walk in the door, but sometimes that still happens.
Right.
And so, and I think that, we obviously have to fall back on physician delegated authority as to where, every individual's physician delegation authority will state whether they're, that their physician approves them to be able to give vaccines. So I leave that to, that's up to every individual and their, their medical director or supervisor to allow for. But I certainly want to put out there that I think we are frontline in many cases. And so, and be considered for athletic trainers that want to pursue and get vaccinated, that they would be considered in that, with those roles. So
I couldn't agree more. We know all the stories about
I know
with the league, whether it's the NFL, NBA, college football, the athletic trainers are usually the ones that are not only, in charge of implementing protocols, they're usually the head of those teams. I talk to Brandy. I talk to Brandy Gothard every Friday night. He's the head athletic trainer at Lake Travis High School, and I know all the stuff that they go through. They're student athletic trainers dealing with things like, they're not using the Gatorade squeeze bottles anymore. It's the little cups, and they carry the bag. So not only do they hand the cup to you, they take it from you to put it in the trash bags, stuff like that. They, all the things with masks on the sidelines and the Gators. Believe me, David, you and I, know quite well. I know as much about what the athletic trainers do, especially in something like this. And I have mentioned it a couple times. Again, I think a lot of it's going to depend on what that first allotment of doses, and that's the other thing. So, like for instance, I believe all 4 of these vaccines, the way they're being designed, they require 2 shots. They require 2 doses. So that they've got to take that into consideration. Is that initial allotment going to be for everybody to get a first dose, and then they will send another one? Or is that going to be the 2 doses per whoever, and you've got to figure that out? So again, I think they are along. They've got a huge plan. It's very, very detailed, but there's still a lot of unknown, just like with everything else with COVID-19.
No, I appreciate it, Stuart. you know, I am no way saying that we needed to be in front of the ER providers and things like that, but I just, you know, but as allied healthcare professionals,
Right.
we're identified as, sometimes, I mean, we're not always remembered in that list. It's, if you're not a nurse, you're a physician, or
Hmm.
certain levels of healthcare that are most commonly recognized out in the workplace and in the world, that, sometimes it's,
Yeah.
we're not always brought to the forefront. So
Right.
anyway, thanks for that, and then we appreciate it. Appreciate all you're doing for the agency out and being that voice over there. So thank you very much.
My
Any other
pleasure.
questions from board? Okay, thank you, Stuart.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to the executive office. Executive Director Ayers Mendez, are you
Mr.
on?
Chairman, I am, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me just fine? If you don't mind, we've had a couple of requests for a short break. We've been at it for about an hour now. So is it possible to take a short break, and then when we come back, I can provide our executive report?
Be happy to do that. Yes, sir. So it's actually ICE show right at 10:30. Is a 5-minute break adequate for everyone? Hearing
I've
okay.
seen a couple of those.
We'll plan on reconvening at 10:35 with our call and finish up. Thank you.
Okay.
I was asked by Director Arismendes to just go back and let Ms. Robinson update one thing from her presentation of her board report. So Ms. Robinson, you've got the floor.
Thank you. Thank you for that allowance. This is Dawn Robinson, Customer Service Manager. I also wanted to point out that we have a web form. You can go to the athletic trainers contact us page, and there's a box that says email customer service, and that allows you to submit a web form, which is, it's a regular email. It comes directly to customer service. If you're experiencing pretty long wait times, you can send that web form. It has all the pertinent information, your license type. You can send that web form. We'll pick it up. We normally respond to that in 24 hours. Now, one good thing about that web form, sir, is that if it has an attachment, that attachment goes directly to licensing. So it would, any documents that the licensee would have, that will go directly to licensing, and it would bypass customer service as a whole, and that they can go out to our website and put in the www.tdlr.texas.gov/help and submit that web form. Again, we respond to it in about 24 hours, and we'll get right back to that customer. If we have to give them a call back or send them an email back, and if there are any type of documentation or an attachment, it'll go directly to licensing. So I just wanted to make that clear. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, Mike, you're on the floor.
Chairman Ware, board members, thank you for being in this meeting and attending. I appreciate your service. I know that sometimes it's not easy to have to spend part of your time of your day from your work to come and visit with us. But I do appreciate the time that you're giving to Texas. This is Mike Arismendes. I'm the Deputy Executive Director for the agency. I do want to recognize also Christina Kaiser, who is also a Deputy Executive Director. She came on board with us as a deputy back in November of last year, but was previously the Director of Enforcement. And so we took her out of the pan, put her into the fire in her new deputy role. We also have another Deputy Executive Director by the name of David Gonzalez. He's actually not foreign to the agency. He's been with us for 24 years. And he is also was the Director of RPM prior to becoming a Deputy Executive Director. So we welcome both of them on board. Chairman Ware, you are recognizing the outstanding work that Stuart Myrick has done with the agency. Let me tell you that he has been very informative and godsend to us. He's constantly providing us updates on the COVID response. He's also has been providing updates on hurricanes and tropical storms that have been coming our direction. So he is putting in overtime. He is working 24/7. It seems like we're always getting emails from him at all hours of the night. So I also want to recognize Stuart and the work that he's done for the agency and also for the industry, which you guys already know that, but just know that his talents go way beyond just athletic training. He has been fantastic in the agency with us. So I do want to talk about a couple of things I'm going to mention in my report. I'm going to talk about the COVID update and also our legislative appropriations request. Christina Kaiser is going to bring you up to date on our strategic plan and also the Sunset Commission staff report. And then I will follow up with the communication stats that we have. So in our COVID response, as you know, when all of this began and happened in March, we went home. We sent our employees home. They've been working from there ever since. Continue to crank out and continue to issue all the licenses that we need for the state of Texas, doing enforcement calls, doing inspections. So we're still managing to do that. Currently, we're developing a plan to return to the office after January the 1st of 2021. We're still maintaining and watching all the numbers in the state of Texas. We'll continue to evaluate those numbers as we get closer, but at this point in time, we are developing plans to look at a return of January 1. As you're aware, our IT did an outstanding job in getting everybody up and running from our employee staff because of the fact that imagine having a mass exodus of about 500 people going home, and then our IT department had to ensure that everyone continued to communicate back in however form fashion they could, and they've done a great job in that. I would also let you know that our inspections, we did begin a limited amount of inspections and investigation in June, which I believe our last meeting here was June the 22nd. So just prior to that, we began to start doing limited inspections and investigations. I'll let you know that we are looking at each county and looking at those rates in each individual county to identify which counties we are not going to be performing inspections and investigations in or limited basis because we want to make sure that our employees are safe at all times. In the process of doing that, we did waive some CE requirements for individual license that expired in March, April, May, and June. We also waived late renewal fees through June 15th. So we have continued to work with the governor's office, and we'll continue to start with that process and not end that. So we're in constant communication with the governor's office on the ability to either waive fees or to extend license dates. So we're still doing that. On our legislative appropriations update, I'll let you know that we did submit our update and the appropriations request to the Legislative Budget Board in the governor's office back in August. I can tell you that I'm sure you're probably keeping up with the news. In July, we were asked to have a 5% reduction in our budget for the biennium. So we took the overall amount of what our biennium budget was, and we had to cut 5% off. All state agencies, or sorry, most state agencies had to do that. So we managed to meet that in our fiscal year 20, and we're now in fiscal year 21, and we've identified again a budget cut to be able to allow for that. But when the legislative appropriations request instructions came out, they asked us to submit a budget that also took into account a 5% budget reduction. So when we submitted our next biennium budget, which will be for fiscal year 22 and 23, it will include a 5% budget reduction. So we managed to meet that and submit that to the governor's office. We did have some exceptional items in that we submitted back. And all of that information, of course, is located on our website. You can go out there and see what our COVID response is. You can see what our appropriations request that we've submitted to the governor's office and the LBB. Along with that, which Kaiser is about to start discussing, is our strat plan and our sunset commission. So all of that information is out on the website that you can get to. If you don't have any questions, I'll let Kaiser, or Deputy Executive Director Christina Kaiser, begin her report, but I'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have based on what I just gave you.
Board, do you have any questions for Mr. Osmendez? Okay, Ms. Kaiser.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chairman Weir and ladies and gentlemen. I'm Christina Kaiser. I am one of the Deputy Executive Directors here at TDLR. Thank you, Mike, for the introduction. My area of responsibility is regulatory affairs. So I am responsible for the enforcement, field inspections, and regulatory program management divisions. I wanted to tell you a little bit about our strategic plan, and I believe you might have been briefed about this at your last meeting in June, so I'm going to try to not go on too long about it. So as you know, if you're acquainted with the legislative process, the next legislative session is going to begin in January of 2021. The legislature meets every 2 years in odd numbers years. And in the even numbered year before each session, state agencies are required to submit a couple of things in preparation for the session. One of those is the strategic plan, which is always due around June. And then a couple of months later comes the legislative appropriations request, or LAR, that Mike just talked about. So the strategic plan is sort of an introduction to the agency. It lays out who we are, what we do, what our areas of responsibility are, what our goals and priorities are, and sort of what the challenges are that we see on our horizon over the next 5 years. I've always thought it a curiosity. You turn in the strategic plan every 2 years, but each strategic plan is a forward-looking document for 5 years of time. So in this case, the current strategic plan covers the years 2021 to 2025. So historically, TDLR has approached strategic planning in a big way. We historically have traveled to various cities around the state and held in-person focus group meetings for our licensees and anyone from the public who is interested to provide input into our plan. This time around, we completed the strategic plan virtually because of the safety concerns associated with the pandemic. we used a variety of online tools to invite input from licensees and the public. So one of the big points in the strategic plan is that we state what our agency goals are. And now this is the third cycle of the strategic planning process where agencies have been allowed to include agency goals, and TDLR has included those all 3 times. The most recent strategic plan reflects the agency goals starting on page 26 of the plan. And they touch on things like fully implementing the recommendations coming out of our sunset review, which is a whole separate process that I'll talk about a little bit, removing redundancies and eliminating bottlenecks, focusing on protecting health and safety. And another big point in the goals is positioning us to respond better to the next natural disaster, pandemic, or crisis. For a long time, our emergency or disaster planning was very much focused on natural disasters like hurricanes, tornadoes, et cetera. Along came the pandemic, and we had to shift some of that thinking a little bit. So we're trying to get our head around that and be prepared for the next thing that might happen, and be a little bit better prepared in advance. And finally, the last goal has to do with continuing to streamline and improve administration of programs that were recently transferred to TDLR. That was all I was going to touch on regarding the strategic plan. If there are any questions about the strategic plan, I'll answer those now, or otherwise I'll shift over to talk about the sunset review a little bit.
Questions, any board members? Okay.
So TDLR is under review currently by the Sunset Commission. The Sunset Commission is another agency of the state of Texas, and its role is to review existing state agencies on a periodic basis and make recommendations to the legislature about whether those agencies continue in existence or should be changed or in some way. The point of a sunset review is to determine essentially, is the agency still relevant? Is the agency still adding value to the citizens of Texas for the purpose that the agency was created for whenever it was originally created? So TDLR's review began last year in September of 2019. Staff members from the Sunset Commission came over to TDLR and met with our employees many times in small and large groups, probably 80 to 100 times or more. There were meetings with staff. The staff members from TDLR really immersed themselves in, the staff members from Sunset really immersed themselves in TDLR and rolled up their sleeves and learned how we do things, what our processes are, what our structures are, and what some of our weaknesses or our areas of opportunity for improvement are. The Sunset staff issued their written report about TDLR on June the 4th. And the Sunset staff report is divided into issues. Our particular report has 7 issues in it. Of note, issue 1 contains the recommendation that TDLR continue in existence. So that's always good to hear. Under each issue, if you've had an opportunity to look at the Sunset staff report, you'll see that under each issue, there will be sort of a narrative discussion of what that issue is, and then following that, there will be some recommendations. And in each area of recommendations, there are 2 different kinds. There are statute change recommendations that, of course, need to be effected through the next legislative process. And then there are also management action recommendations. Management action recommendations are things that the agency can just do on its own initiative. It typically involves changes to procedures, structures, or some kind of policy, perhaps. So the issuance of the Sunset staff report is just one step in a process. It's definitely not the end of the process. The next steps that we anticipate are a public hearing before the Sunset Commission, where the agency will be present to make a presentation and answer questions. And also there is a possibility of public testimony at the hearing. Following the public, and our hearing has not been set yet. We are keeping an eye on the Sunset Commission's website, and we have been informed that our public hearing should be expected between now and January. After the public hearing before Sunset, the next step is a separate meeting where Sunset actually makes decisions on the recommendations made by the Sunset staff. The Sunset Commission is made up of 5 senators, 5 representatives, and 2 public members. And so they will vote on the staff recommendations, and they can accept, they can reject, they can change them if they want to. After the Sunset's decision meeting, anything that is recommended in the way of statute changes will be put into a bill that then gets filed in the legislative session, and it has to make its way through the legislative session and pass. And then, of course, any statute changes that pass in that bill, it will be TDLR's responsibility, of course, to implement those. So it's a long process, and there are many opportunities still for public input and for our licensed populations to have input into the process. It's important for your group in particular to note that this Sunset Report does not specifically cover this program, athletic trainers. This was a limited scope review to not focus on the programs that were recently transferred to TDLR, but instead to focus on the legacy programs, the programs that have been here for a longer period of time. Now, that being said, your input is certainly welcome. So if you or anyone who's listening has the desire to have input into the process, you are welcome to go to the Sunset Commission's website, and there is a form there where you can provide any input that you would like to provide into the process. I can tell you that our overall feeling about the Sunset process is no matter what passes or doesn't pass in the legislative session, TDLR is a better agency already for having gone through this process. We are already in the process of implementing some of the recommended management actions, and we think they are good ideas that will help us be a better agency going forward. And that's all I have. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
I have one. Just when you were talking about the public hearing, so I'm assuming that's for TDLR to continue to do what they're doing. People can go and comment on behalf of y'all. Is that what that's talking about?
So the Sunset Commission, like everyone else in the world, is struggling during the pandemic to figure out how to most effectively do their business. They are able to accept public comments now through the online format.
Okay.
And they may or may not set up TDLR's public hearing to allow actual public participation.
Sure.
We have seen them do some hearings already that were in a limited format where some people attended in person and some people attended online. And so we're kind of in a wait and see posture as to whether there will actually be public input in the meeting. But if there's not in the meeting, there is still the input available capability on their website.
Okay. I just know that we're probably going to get some questions on that. So I wanted to make sure that I understood. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay. Deputy Executive Director Harris Mendez, you want to wrap up your portion?
Yeah, I will. Thank you, sir. And Ms. Webb, I would tell you that we're encouraging everyone to go out and make comments on TDLR. So they can do that, of course, via the website that is located on the Sunset Commission. So if they go to sunset.texas.gov, they can submit comments under the Sunset Commission report for TDLR. So they're still accepted. And so, we're kind of encouraging everyone to be able to go out and do that for the advisory boards that we have. So I'll go ahead and finish up and let you know that you see on the screen right now that over the past 6 months, beginning from May 1st until the end of October, there have been over 37,000 hits on the athletic trainer's website. So it's kind of an average of 201 per day. So 64% of those accessed from a desktop, 35 from a smartphone, 1 from a tablet. You see there at the top reasons to visit the website is to, number 1 is to apply for athletic trainer's license, a new athletic trainer's license. 2 is for exam information. Number 3 is to read the administrative rules. 4 is to renew an athletic trainer license. So it looks like we're having more activity for new license than to renew license. And then, of course, 5 are the continuing education requirements that are needed for athletic trainers. So those are the top 5 reasons. I was kind of hoping that maybe they would have maybe number 1 to see who's on the board of directors, but on the board for athletic trainers, I guess that's not a big concern for them. So you guys are doing a great job, so they don't have any reason to not to contact you or find out who they are. So Chairman Ware, board members, that is the end of our executive report. I'll be more than happy to answer any questions that have come up when we're presenting our information to you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Executive Director, or Deputy Executive Director. I don't want to get Brian upset with me by giving you the wrong title.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, don't give me a demotion just yet.
That's right, exactly. Any other questions or comments from the board? Mr. Aris-Mendez. Well, thank you, and thank you for your help, and I know you're a huge advocate for our board and our profession. So thank you for all that you do. So
thank you. I appreciate you. Thanks.
I think that concludes our reports from all the different entities. And so I need to move to agenda item F, which addresses a rule change at which we have put out and sent out. So I'm going to introduce Mrs. Molly Fudel, our Assistant General Counsel. Molly was going to present any public comments that we received regarding that. And then she will ask for a motion from our board to adopt. This is basically addressing our issue with the human trafficking requirement for our license holders to be involved in. So, Ms. Fudel, you have the floor.
All right, thank you so much for that introduction. This is Molly Fudel, Assistant General Counsel here with TDLR. So I'm going to go ahead and share the rules so we can all take a look at them. All right, so as Chair Weir was saying, these rules are designed to implement HB 2059, that's the bill that contains that human trafficking prevention training requirement. It's in statute, and so we are incorporating it into the rules just to make the two harmonize. These rules were published in the Texas Register on September 25th, and then that 30 days for public comment closed on October 26th. We actually did not receive any public comments in response to these rules. I'm just going to go back through them. There was a little bit of a change, and I will show that to you. So first, in 110.24, we're adding in C, and that is, again, that requirement for that training approved by HHSC that must be done before each renewal. Moving on to 110.25, this is continuing education, and this is the change that we made. So going on to 8B8, this describes the acceptable continuing education activities. And essentially what this does is it says that human trafficking prevention training course that's approved by HHSC would be acceptable to count towards the minimum continuing education. And then moving a little bit further down in C2, what we're doing in here is we're referencing that human trafficking training in B8, and we're saying that it's going to count on a one-for-one basis. So that certificate of completion, if it says that it's an hour-long training, then you would get 1 hour of continuing education training, or excuse me, credit for completing that training. So again, these have been out for public comment. We didn't receive any public comment, so staff is recommending that you vote to recommend adoption without any changes. I'm available for any questions you might have.
Any questions from board before I call for a motion?
One question that I read on the at the very first, it said that licensee would need to provide proof of proof of following through with the training. Is that if called for, or when they submit their application for renewal, they will have to show documentation of that?
Well, right now, they do have to provide proof as prescribed by the department, and that proof is simply attesting and swearing that they did complete that training. If they decide to count it towards their required CE, then they're going to have to keep that certificate of completion, just like they do for all other CEs.
Right. I just wanted to make sure that we didn't have to physically or electronically submit that documentation immediately with more than just verifying that we took the course and having proof later on down the line that if it was ever in question that we had to show it.
Exactly, Red. So basically, if you're audited, you know.
You've got it, and I get that. I just didn't want to have to go ahead and submit it just because I'm renewing, because that's the way it's written in the rules.
This is
Right,
Leonard,
so the way-
oh, sorry, Molly. This
No,
is
go ahead,
Leonard,
Leonard.
with the licensing division. So we've added a question to the renewal form that asks if you completed the required human trafficking course, yes or no. And we've also added that same question to the online renewal form as well.
Any other?
Works for me. I don't need Mary getting mad at me again.
Yeah, you got your hand slapped too many times.
Unfair.
Any other questions or comments before I call for a motion? Okay, do I have a motion from a board member to adopt this rule as presented?
Motion.
Mr. Gaines made that motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, Mr. Fitch has seconded the motion. Any discussion before I call for the question? Actually, I got to follow my instructions here, and I almost messed up, so I'm stopping myself. So so Angelica, would you call for the question for the board?
Yes, sir. David Weir, presiding officer.
In favor, yes.
Mr. Michael Fitch.
In favor?
Mr. Daryl Gaines.
In favor.
And Ms. Brittany Webb.
In favor.
Your motion passes, Mr. Weir.
Thank you so much. So continuing on, let me move on to agenda item G. Ms. Fidel is still on that agenda item, so you have the floor for the 4-year rule review.
Thank you. Yes, I'm here to give you the update on the 4-year rule review. Again, this is Molly Fidel, Assistant General Counsel with TDLR. So if you are already signed up for the email blasts that are related to the athletic trainer program, then you've already received some information about this. But I wanted to give you guys some more information just so you can be better educated on what this is in case you're not familiar. So every 4 years, every state agency has to review all their rules to make sure that the reasons for adopting those rules continue to exist and to see if any changes should be made. So we're currently doing that for the athletic trainer program. And just like with the normal rulemaking process, we file that notice in the Texas Register. This time it's a notice of intent to review the rules. And the public has 30 days to comment. So that notice was published on October 9th. That 30-day period is going to be up on November 9th. And during that time, we're accepting all comments about the rules. We encourage people to comment about things that they think ought to be changed. If you do choose to comment, please be as specific as you can. That really helps us to understand what you're coming from and what you're requesting. So at the end of that 30-day comment period, we forward those comments to the commission for their consideration when they are considering whether to readopt the rules. Just generally speaking, rules tend to be readopted because if the statute is still there, then the rules generally still need to be there. So once the commission readopts the rules, then those comments will come to you and come to staff for our review. And we will look at the rules and see if there's anything that needs to be changed. And at that point, we would go through the regular rulemaking process like we're doing for the HB 2059 rules. So please let me know if you have any questions.
Fellow board, any questions for Molly in regards to this agenda item?
Yes, I do, Chairman Weir. Molly, could you state to the people who may be watching that this is for comments on the rule and not the law?
Yes, it is. And thank you for that, Brittany. I appreciate that because that is a distinction that we always should make. And it too often just goes past us. So yes, this is for the rules, the administrative rules. So TDLR, our commission, and you have some input as well on the rules. Those are things that we can change on our own. The statute is set by the legislature. And so we work with what we're given and we do as good of a job as we can with that. But we don't have any power to change the law. If anybody who's watching this has something in the law that they think should be changed, that's something to take up with your state representative or your state senator. So that's the appropriate avenue, not the rule review. Thank you so much, Ms. Webb.
Thank you, Brittany, for mentioning that. That's great education for everyone. Anything else, Molly, before I move on to the next agenda item?
No.
Okay. So agenda item H was brought by myself. So let me give you a little bit of background that I think that we as a board should consider. As we've pivoted and moved to TDLR and now with PSE and the online written examination, I think it might be time to give consideration for requiring anyone who is requesting a temporary license to have a sufficiently passing or a passing score in regards on our written examination prior to us giving a temporary license. Because of the ease of being able to take the test now virtually, within a few days of anyone wanting to do that. I know during our COVID times, that's a little bit more of a challenge, but still, as we heard even in reports earlier, there are those situations. Previously, I feel like the temporary license option was better suited when the exam was and the written and the practical was only given 2 times a year. And we had individuals coming in from out of state who maybe needed or wanted employment in our state. And it was a bridge to allow them to come in and practice and work until they were able to be examined. Well, due to, now the temporary license is basically more because of our, reciprocity of BOC certification. This creates a potential, I hate to use the term loophole, but within our rule of a student that could graduate that meets the eligibility requirements from an educational perspective. In other words, they have their degree, they have taken the courses that which internship programs have recommended to do that, but then essentially they could request and pay because of their educational requirements being met. They could obtain a temporary license for a short period of time up until the next time that the test was given, the practical was given, and be able to practice. And I think as we as a board being, and the agency being due to protect the public of the state of Texas, I would like for our board, and I'm going to recommend a work group, this be a work group decision or working progress, to be able to come up with some dialogue and language that could come back to the board with to make this modification within our rules that we would require this stipulation or an individual to be at least examined from a written standpoint before a temporary license being granted. Any comment from board? Do you support at least the study of this and moving for a work group action on this agenda item?
This is Brittany Webb. I support it.
I think
Michael
that's a
Fitch, I
reasonable.
support it also.
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable plan of action.
Okay. So staff, do we have a work group that this conveniently kind of falls under already in place?
Mary Winston here. Angelica, could you give us the names of the work groups that we have? Sounds like a licensing issue, but I want to make sure we have that title for the work group for this board.
So there is a licensing work group.
That would be the one, presiding officer.
Okay. Refresh my memory. I don't have that in front of me.
I have presiding officer David Weir and Daryl Gaines assigned to the licensing work group.
Okay. All right. Well, Daryl, there we go. I guess we have our marching orders.
Okay.
So we'll work with staff outside of this call to schedule with licensing, and we'll get a Zoom call together so that we can work on this, if that's okay with you, sir. Are you still willing to serve in that capacity?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, perfect. Okay. Moving on to item I, I've got a couple of things that I want to, again, this probably will fall into some work group items. So first of all, this goes back in because of it already being presented as a rule and out for public comment. I think there's one little bit of housekeeping thing that I think we need to consider in regards to the human trafficking. As Molly stated, it is a 1-for-1, 1 hour of participation for 1 hour of continuing ed. Not that anyone ever would do this, but I want to prevent someone from taking a quote unquote 20-hour continuing education course in human trafficking and getting 20 continuing education units for athletic trainers. So I think we might need to look at, no more than 1 or 2 hours of continuing education to be able to be applied for our continuing education requirements from this particular course. So I throw that out there to say, do you guys agree that that's a concern?
Sure, I'm with you.
And this is Molly Fudel, Assistant General Counsel again. Rather than having discussion on the topic, how about let's just go ahead and put it on the recommendations for a future meeting, and that's something that a work group can look at in the meantime.
Okay, all right. Another agenda item that I want to look at is that the preceptor CEUs in the collegiate setting, particularly in the accredited programs, there is a title of an individual, or I say a task of individuals of being preceptors. And this is terminology that's much more in line with accreditation. But these are individuals that supervise students and help check off on competencies and things like that. It is somewhat of a time-consuming task. The Board of Certification of Athletic Trainers recognizes these individuals and allows them to get 5 hours of continuing education for participation in that per recording period. Our rule is a little bit, it's a little bit specific to the fact that if the preceptor is compensated for that action, then they would not be allowed to, but if they voluntarily did it, then they could. And I feel like that's kind of splitting hairs as to, number one, I think that a work group could consider making sure that we are fine with allowing that continuing education to be counted because of the education that goes in. It's on behalf of the preceptor and what they're doing, but also that limitation of hours to be able to restrict how many hours that they could actually count, and not necessarily put a stipulation on whether they were compensated for their additional work in their workplace or not. So I'd like to place that as an agenda item or as a work group, Molly, as a work group that could look at that and be able to come back to the board on that item as well.
Yeah, I think that would be a great work group item.
Okay. Can we go ahead and place that into a work group now, or do I have to wait till a future meeting and have this on an agenda?
No, we can go ahead and convene a work group in the meantime.
Okay, what best work group would be to take on that?
That sounds like an education and examination
Yes,
work group.
Chairman Ware, this is Rebecca Adamus. I'll be sure to get with the team so that we can reach out and get our work group set up so we can meet to discuss these items.
Okay, perfect. Okay, last item that I have is under Occupation Code 157, in which that's where the athletic trainers, fundamentally, we hang our shingle of working under the physician's delegated authority. Within that, it basically says that we need to have an arrangement or work under a physician as to our practice. I feel like that it's time that we as athletic trainers and that we probably need to consider to I guess further mandate, further require, further encourage, maybe a better word, for athletic trainers across our state to have that literally a document in place regarding their standing orders or their or that agreement with the physician that they are working under. I feel like many athletic trainers are working under what I would call a gentle person's agreement, and that might not completely be in a writing format. And I think to better define as to who you're working under and what you can do would be very nicely done if it's in that a written agreement with your medical director or with a team physician type of format. I understand that there's certainly some logistics of going in, but I feel like that this is something that should be identified as to how we're working and the licenses that we're working under to better support and better defend our athletic trainers within our state if they are ever in doubt or questioned in a legal matter as to why can you do what you did? Well, because this doctor, he or she has specifically delegated their authority for me to perform these particular skills. And I think that needs to, in this day and time, needs to be in a written format. So I, again, think that this ought to be in a working group to put into position to study and look at how we could potentially implement this requirement for renewals as well as new licensees and how that could potentially look.
So this might be something else that could be referred to a work group. Perhaps it sounds kind of like a licensing issue or maybe also an enforcement type of issue.
Okay, so Ms. Winston, I yield the floor to you. I see you're thinking, you're scratching your chin right now. I saw that as to where we best place that. And if you want to huddle up with your attorneys after the call and see where this is best placed, then please do so and let me know as to what best work group, if that's fair, if that's better for you, as opposed to putting you on the spot at this moment.
No problem. Mary Winston, TDLR. I agree with Molly, Ms. Fudel, that ultimately enforcement, but I'm thinking licensing, Molly, initially. Do you agree?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So, okay, it sounds like, Mr. Weir, you're stacking up work on you in red, but I know y'all can handle it.
So, may I make a comment? This is Brittany Webb. Okay, so the standing orders, there is a document that probably legal needs to look at, I think is what David's trying to say, but there is a standing orders on the TSATA website that may be the starting point of the work group.
Thank you, Brittany. With that, I'm going to say, and with the help of Heather Muir, thank you, Heather. I'm thinking we're RPM to start this standard of care. We'll start this discussion with the guidance of Which is it? Which association?
TSATA.
Yeah.
TSADA. Okay, with
Right.
TSADA. Okay, perfect.
It's on there. If you wanted to go to their website right now, it's on there and a copy of it.
Okay, so Angelica, who do we have do we have standard of care and who do we have on that one?
Sorry, I was. We have Mr. Weir and Brittany Webb on standard of care.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Thank you, board, for allowing me to present my items for future agenda items to work on. So I open the floor up for any others that you know of or that you would like to either assign to a work group or put out for future consideration. Fellow board. Okay. Hearing none there, we'll move into item J. So staff, where are you seeing that we need to look at a future meeting? Molly, you are muted.
I am so sorry. Thank you.
That's okay. It happens to the best of us.
We try, but anyway. So what I was going to say was we've got some work on our plate. We've got some work groups that need to meet. So I think what would be best is if we poll the board later, once we have a better idea of when we will need you guys to reconvene.
Completely good with that. Completely good with that. And probably we will likely meet in this format again. So, obviously it takes less planning time when we can meet virtually. So, but we'll see where that goes. Okay. Any other items good for the day before I call us adjourned? Do I have a motion from the board for adjournment of this meeting?
Motion made.
Mr. Gaines makes that motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Fitch seconds that. Any other discussion before we adjourn? Hearing none, our meeting will be adjourned.
Thanks, everybody. Y'all stay safe out